You knew it was over. Not in the way you wanted it to be over. Not with closure. Not with understanding. Not with the conversation that would have made sense of everything. Just over. Suddenly. Completely. In the specific way that only a narcissist can end something. As if the entire relationship was a room they simply walked out of and locked behind them. And you did the work. Not easily. Not quickly. But you did it. You created distance. You stopped reaching out. You rebuilt. Slowly, painfully, day by day, some version of a life that did not have them at the center of it. And then, a message. Maybe it was short. Maybe it was long. Maybe it was an accidental like on an old photo that you told yourself meant nothing and could not stop thinking about. Maybe it was a mutual friend who mentioned, casually, almost as an aside, that they had been asking about you. However it arrived. And something happened inside you that you were not prepared for. Not just hope. Something older than hope. Something that lived in the part of you that the relationship had rewired. The part that had been trained, over months or years, to respond to the return of their attention the way a starving person responds to the smell of food. You told yourself you would not respond. And you are here, watching this video, which means something. It means you are trying to understand what just happened, what is happening, what that feeling was and where it came from, and whether what they are offering is real. I am going to tell you all of it. And by the time this video is over, you are going to understand something that will make the choice in front of you the clearest it has ever been. The term hoovering comes from the vacuum cleaner brand, Hoover, because that is exactly what it is. A sucking back in, a powerful pull designed to draw you back into the orbit of someone who discarded you. Not because anything has changed, but because something in their supply structure has shifted. And I need you to understand that second part completely before we go any further, because it is the part that everything else depends on. The Hoover is not about you. It is not about love. It is not about realization. It is not about the person finally understanding what they had and what they lost. It is about supply. The narcissist operates on narcissistic supply. The emotional energy, the attention, the reactions, the validation that they extract from the people in their lives. And when that supply runs low, when the current source is becoming difficult, or has grown wise to the patterns, or has simply become boring, old sources get contacted. Not because you were special, because you were available. Because you were responsive before. Because the file they kept on you, everything you told them, everything they learned about what you need and what you fear, is still there, still usable. The Hoover is a calculated re-extraction attempt, dressed in the language of love. Let me tell you what the Hoover message actually communicates, underneath whatever words were used. Underneath the, "I have been thinking about you," is, "My current supply situation is not meeting my needs." Underneath the, "I made a mistake," is, "I need you to believe I have changed so that you will become accessible again." Underneath the, "I miss you," is, "I miss the supply you provided." Underneath the, "I have never stopped loving you," is, "I know this is what you needed to hear." And underneath all of it, underneath every word of every Hoover message that has ever been sent, is something that never changes. The same person, the same patterns, the same capacity or incapacity for the kind of genuine change that would make returning safe. Because here is the truth that the Hoover is specifically designed to make you forget. People can change. Genuinely. Real growth happens. Real transformation is possible. But it does not happen in the space between the discard and the first message back. It does not happen in the weeks or months of silence while you are rebuilding yourself without them. It does not look like a perfectly timed message that arrives exactly when your defenses have lowered enough to receive it. Real change is slow, uncomfortable, usually painful. It happens in therapy rooms and in the dark at 3 in the morning, and in the accumulation of small daily choices over a long time. It does not look like a Hoover. And if what is in front of you looks like a Hoover, it is a Hoover. Not every Hoover arrives the same way, and understanding which type you are receiving changes how clearly you can see what is happening. The first type is the gentle probe, the accidental like, the happy birthday message after years of silence, the forwarded article about something you used to talk about, the "I saw this and thought of you." It is designed to test the temperature, to see if you respond, to see if the door is slightly open before any real investment is made. The gentle probe is not an accident. There is no such thing as an accidental like from someone who knows exactly what they are doing. It is a test. And your response, or your silence, is the data it is collecting. The second type is the grand gesture, the long message, the genuine seeming vulnerability, the acknowledgement of real specific things that actually happened, things only someone who was there would know. The apology that sounds different from every apology that came before it. And the reason it is hardest to resist is precisely because it is the most carefully constructed. The grand gesture uses the file. It reaches into everything they learned about you, everything you told them in your most open moments, and it deploys that knowledge to create the most convincing possible version of what you always wanted to hear. You always wanted to be acknowledged. The grand gesture acknowledges you. You always wanted to be apologized to. The grand gesture apologizes. You always wanted them to see what they had. The grand gesture describes seeing it, in specific, personal, seemingly genuine detail. It is a performance, written by the only person in the world who knows your script well enough to perform it perfectly. The third type is the crisis Hoover. Something has happened in their life, something difficult, something that has generated need for comfort, for support, for the specific warmth that you provided. And somehow, in the middle of their difficulty, they found their way back to you. This one activates everything that is most genuinely loving in you. Your instinct to show up for people who are struggling, your empathy, your care. And it is deployed, consciously or not, precisely because those qualities in you are known. Because you were always the person who showed up. Because showing up for someone in pain is something you cannot easily refuse. The crisis is real. The suffering may be real. And the pull you feel toward it is genuinely you. But it is also the door. And once the door is open, the crisis will resolve. And what comes next will not be gratitude. It will be the relationship picking up exactly where it left off. The fourth type is the threat Hoover. This is the least romantic and the most revealing. When warmth does not work, when the gentle probe gets no response, when the grand gesture gets politely declined, when the crisis is not enough to open the door. Then the tone changes. What was warm becomes cold. What was loving becomes threatening. The person who was just expressing how much they missed you suddenly has concerns about things you share. The threat Hoover reveals the architecture underneath all the others, because the warmth and the threat come from the same place: control. When warmth serves control, there is warmth. When threat serves control better, there is threat. The shift from one to the other is the clearest possible evidence of what the Hoover was always about. I need to talk to you about the feeling, because the feeling is real, and its reality is one of the things that makes the Hoover so dangerous. When the message arrives, when the person who rewired your nervous system makes contact again, your brain does something specific, something chemical. Something that bypasses everything you know and lands directly in the part of you that was most deeply conditioned. Dopamine. The same neurochemical that drives every addiction. The same release that happened every time the warmth returned after the coldness. Every time the good version appeared after the difficult one. Every time the cycle completed and you felt, however briefly, that things were okay again. Your brain does not know the relationship is over. Your brain knows a powerful source of intermittent reward just reappeared. And intermittent reward, unpredictable, sometimes present, sometimes withdrawn, creates stronger neurological responses than consistent reward. Which means the pull you feel toward the Hoover is not evidence that they are right for you. It is evidence of how deeply the conditioning ran. It is withdrawal recognizing its source. And that recognition, that desperate, real, physical pull toward someone who hurt you, is not love asking you to go back. It is your nervous system asking for the drug it was trained to need. Before any decision gets made, before any response gets sent, before the door opens or stays closed, 5 questions. Answer them honestly, not with what you hope is true, with what you actually know. What specifically has changed? Not what they have said has changed, not what the message implies has changed. What do you actually know, based on observable behavior over time, has genuinely shifted? If the answer is nothing that you can point to clearly, that is an answer.
How long did the change take? Real change takes time. Significant, consistent, demonstrated time. Weeks are not enough. Months are often not enough. The question is whether there has been enough time and enough support, usually professional support, for the specific patterns that caused harm to have been genuinely examined and replaced. If the answer is they were gone for 3 months and now they are back, that is an answer. Has the thing that caused the harm been acknowledged specifically? Not generally. Not, I know I was not perfect, or I know I hurt you. Specifically, the exact behaviors, the exact patterns, named clearly, without defensiveness, without immediately pivoting to what you could have done differently. If the acknowledgement is general, that is an answer. What would returning actually look like? Not in the fantasy, in the reality. The daily reality of the dynamic that existed before. Not the love bombing that would accompany the return. Not the grand gesture honeymoon that always follows a Hoover when it succeeds. The reality that came after the love bombing last time. If the honest answer is, it would eventually look like what it looked like before, that is an answer.
What does the fear of not responding feel like? And where does it come from? Because there is a fear. There is almost always a fear of missing the one time it was actually real, of closing a door that maybe should have stayed open, of being wrong about what this is. Sit with that fear and ask, is this fear coming from genuine hope based on genuine evidence? Or is this the fear that was trained into me, the fear that was always there when they withdrew, the fear that always made me reach back? If the fear feels like the same fear you felt during the silent treatment, that is an answer. Here is the hardest truth. If you go back, without the answers to those 5 questions being genuinely different from everything that came before, you will not be returning to something that changed. You will be returning to something that paused. The cycle does not transform because the Hoover worked. It continues, with the added weight of the knowledge that they could leave and come back, and you would open the door, which tells them, more clearly than anything else you could communicate, exactly how much leverage they still have. And leverage, in the hands of someone who uses it, does not disappear. It grows. But here's the other side of that truth. The fact that the Hoover is happening, the fact that they came back, is actually confirmation of something you needed to know. You were not forgotten. Not because you were special to them in the way you needed to be, but because you were valuable supply. Because the file on you is still open. Because the investment in making you attached was real, even if what drove that investment was not love. You mattered to the system, and you deserve to matter to something real. Not a system, not a supply structure, not a carefully maintained file of your vulnerabilities deployed at the moment of maximum effectiveness. A person who chooses you, not when their supply runs low, but consistently, daily, even when it costs them something. That is what the Hoover is trying to make you forget exists. Do not forget. Do not respond immediately. Whatever the Hoover message is, whatever it contains, you do not owe an immediate response. The urgency you feel is the conditioning talking. The message will still be there in a day, in a week, in whatever time you need to answer the 5 questions honestly. Urgency in a Hoover is manufactured. Your time is yours. Tell someone you trust. Not to get permission, not to be talked into or out of anything, but because the Hoover is specifically designed to work on you alone, in your private moments, with the full weight of your history and your longing and your conditioning. Another person, someone who knows your history, someone who was not conditioned by the same relationship, sees it differently. Use that perspective.
Go back and read the file, not their file on you, your file on the relationship. Whatever record you kept, journals, texts, conversations with friends during the difficult times, the things you wrote or said when you were in the middle of it, when you were confused, when you were hurt. The Hoover arrives when your memory of the bad times has softened. It counts on that softening. Go back and read what you wrote when the memory was fresh. That person, the one who wrote those things, who felt those things, deserves to be heard right now. If you respond from clarity, not from the pull. If after all of this you choose to respond, do it slowly. Do it carefully. Do it with a clear sense of what you would need to see over time before any door opens further. Not what they say, what they demonstrate. Over time, consistently, without reverting,
That is the only evidence that matters. The Hoover feels like a question about them, whether they changed, whether this is real, whether this time is different. But that is not actually the question. The question is about you, about who you are now, after everything you went through, after the distance you created, after the clarity you built so painfully, compared to who you were when you first opened the door to them. The Hoover is a test, not of whether they deserve another chance, of whether you trust yourself enough to use what you know. You have done the work. You created the distance. You rebuilt something. The version of you that exists right now, reading this, watching this, asking these questions, is not the version that was recruited at the beginning. That version did not have this information. You do. Use it. If this video gave you the clarity you were looking for, please share it with one person who just received a message they did not know how to understand. Because somewhere right now, someone is staring at a Hoover message, feeling the pull, wanting it to be real, and they deserve to understand what they are actually holding. Subscribe, because this channel exists to give you exactly this, the psychology that makes the choice clear when everything in you wants to make it complicated. I will see you in the next one.